The gilded doors of the Opal Lounge felt heavier than usual that night. Or perhaps it was the weight in my chest, a cold, dense stone of 3 years of expectations, that made pushing them open such a Herculean task. My hand, sporting the flawless 5-carat diamond engagement ring that had been the envy of every society girl in Ethelberg, rested on the polished brass handle. I was late to my own fiancé's impromptu gathering. Alexander Sterling, the man I had loved since I could remember, the boy who had pulled my pigtails in grade school and the man who had proposed under a shower of fireworks on New Year's Eve, was waiting inside. Or so I thought. I was about to exert the final ounce of pressure when the sound of laughter, raucous and unfiltered, spilled through the crack in the door. It wasn't the polite, measured laughter of business associates. It was the sound of a pack reveling in a shared secret. I froze, my instincts screaming at me to turn and walk away, to preserve the beautiful, fragile illusion of my life for one more night. But my feet were rooted to the spot. A private gathering? Why would you bring your mistress here, Alex? Don't say I didn't warn you. Elara will be here any moment. The voice belonged to his friend Marcus. A sliver of ice traced its way down my spine. Mistress? The word was so archaic, so tawdry it didn't belong in my world, in our world. Then came Alexander's voice, laced with a lazy, condescending drawl that was both familiar and suddenly alien. So what if she comes? If it weren't for the strict family rules, needing to match in status, who would get engaged to such a boring woman? I'm so fed up with her clinging to me. I wish she would just call off the engagement. The air left my lungs in a silent, painful rush. Boring. Fed up. Clinging. Each word was a physical blow. The cold stone in my chest shattered into a million shards of glass, tearing me apart from the inside. The ring on my finger felt like a brand, a symbol of my own gullibility. The crowd inside burst into laughter, a cruel chorus endorsing my humiliation. Who in the circle doesn't know Elara is your simp? No matter when, if you turn around, she'll always be behind you. Do you think if Alex brings his mistress home she'll call off the engagement? No way. At most, Elara will cry and force him to break up with her, but she would never be willing to end the engagement. I could almost see him flicking the ash from his cigarette, that infuriatingly handsome smirk on his face, not rebutting a single word because they were all so satisfying to him. This was the truth. This was what he really thought. Our entire childhood, our shared history, our engagement, it was all a performance, a box he had to tick for his family's legacy. I was a convenient, well-bred prop. Memories flashed before my eyes, a montage of my own foolishness. Him forgetting my birthday and me making excuses for his busy schedule. Him flirting with other women at parties and me blaming the champagne. Me always being the one to text first, to plan our dates, to be the steady, understanding presence he could rely on. I had mistaken my devotion for love and his indifference for cool masculinity. Gathering a shred of courage I didn't know I possessed, I pushed the door open. The scene was exactly as I had pictured it, yet 1,000 times more painful to witness firsthand. Alexander was sprawled on a low-slung velvet sofa, his long legs stretched out, an arm draped possessively around a willowy blonde I recognized from the society pages, Chloe. He saw me immediately. There was no shock, no guilt, not even a flicker of embarrassment. He simply stubbed out his cigarette, his gaze meeting mine with a challenge. He didn't care that I had heard. He didn't care at all. Elara, he said, his voice a low rumble. Chloe wanted to come and have some fun. The other young men in the room, Marcus and the rest of Alexander's sycophantic circle, had the decency to look momentarily uncomfortable, their amused glances turning to awkward shuffles. Chloe, however, played her part to perfection. Sister, please don't blame Mr. Sterling. It was me who wanted to come. I've never been to a gathering like this and I wanted to gain some experience. She then dramatically covered her mouth. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I just feel a bit nauseous. She dry heaved again, a performance so transparent it was almost insulting. Everyone's attention snapped to her. Alexander's brow furrowed, not with concern, but with what looked like irritation. I'll have my assistant take you to the hospital. Before the assistant could move, Chloe grabbed Alexander's arm, her lower lip trembling. I'm not sick. She lifted her gaze, her eyes locking directly with mine, a triumphant little gleam in their blue depths. I'm pregnant. Silence. A thick, heavy silence that swallowed the room whole. You could have heard a pin drop. Alexander's expression didn't soften into happiness. It just darkened, his jaw tightening. This was an unforeseen complication, a wrinkle in his carefully curated, carefree life. And in that absolute silence I started to laugh. It was a dry, hollow sound completely devoid of humor. It was the sound of a dam breaking, of 3 years of suppressed feelings finally erupting. All eyes turned to me, wide with confusion. I looked directly at Alexander, at the man who had just reduced our life together to a joke. Slowly, deliberately, I twisted the heavy diamond ring off my finger. Felt like shedding a chain. "Alexander," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Let's break off our engagement. From now on we go our separate ways." I didn't throw it at him. I simply opened my hand and let it drop. The ring hit the marble floor with a sharp, final clink, a sound that seemed to echo in the stunned quiet of the room. It rolled under the sofa, disappearing from view just as I intended to disappear from his life. I turned on my heel and walked out. I didn't run. I walked with a spine of steel I hadn't known I possessed, leaving the whispers and the shock behind me. I heard Marcus's voice, panicked. "What are you still standing there for? Go after her." Then another voice, deeper and more measured. John, the only one in that group who ever seemed to have a shred of sense. "Alex." I didn't look back to see Alexander's reaction. I was done with his reactions. But I heard his reply, arrogant to the last. "What's there to chase after? Whether the baby is born or not is uncertain. Even if it's born, it will be raised by her. Once she figures it out, she'll naturally come back." I didn't wait to hear more. The gilded doors of the Opal Lounge swung shut behind me, closing on the first chapter of my life. I was adrift, heartbroken and humiliated, but for the first time in years I was free. The cold night air of Ethelberg hit my face like a slap, a welcome shock that momentarily numbed the raw, aching pain in my chest. I didn't call my driver. The thought of sitting in the sterile, silent comfort of the town car, with a chauffeur who had witnessed 3 years of my hopeful departures and happy returns, was unbearable. I just started walking, my heels clicking a frantic, disjointed rhythm on the pavement, a stark contrast to the leaden weight in my soul. Tears threatened, hot and sharp behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here, not on a street where anyone could see. Crying would make it real. Crying would mean that Alexander's words had found their mark, that he had the power to reduce me to the pathetic, clinging woman he so clearly believed me to be. So I walked, my vision blurring at the edges, until the bright, pulsating neon sign of a bar I'd never dare enter under normal circumstances loomed ahead. The Gilded Cactus. It was loud, anonymous, and exactly what I needed. I pushed through the heavy door, the wall of sound, blaring rock music, the clatter of pool balls, and the din of 100 conversations, immediately enveloping me. It was a chaos that mirrored the turmoil inside me. I found a small, sticky table in a shadowy corner, as far from the cheerful crowds as I could get, and slumped into the chair. "What'll it be?" a bored-looking bartender asked, wiping a glass with a cloth that had seen better days. "Whiskey." "Neat. Keep them coming," I said, my voice rough. The first glass was a fire that burned its way down my throat, making my eyes water. Good. Let it be from the alcohol, not from him. The second glass went down smoother, a warm, numbing blanket starting to spread through my limbs. The third and the fourth. I lost count. With each drink, the sharp edges of the memory began to blur. Alexander's smirk, Chloe's triumphant gaze, the cold clink of the ring on the floor. It all started to feel like a bad movie I'd watched about someone else's life. Boring. Fed up. Clinging. The words echoed in my head, but their power was diminishing, drowned in a sea of amber liquid. A reckless, feverish energy began to replace the pain. If I was so boring, then why not be reckless? If he was fed up with me, then I was finally, gloriously free. I paid my tab with a crumpled wad of cash from my clutch, my movements clumsy and uncoordinated. I stood up, the room tilting on a dangerous axis. I needed the bathroom. I weaved through the crowd, my legs feeling like they were made of rubber. I was almost at the restroom door when my heel caught on an uneven floorboard. I pitched forward, a silent scream caught in my throat, bracing for the impact with the grimy floor. It never came. A pair of strong, steady hands caught me, pulling me upright against a wall of immaculately tailored wool and crisp cotton. The scent of him cut through the alcoholic haze, sandalwood clean soap and something else, something uniquely masculine and intensely powerful. It was nothing like Alexander's cloying cologne. "Steady there," a voice said, deep and resonant like dark velvet. I looked up, my vision swimming. The man holding me was formidable. He wasn't just handsome, he was arresting. Dark hair, perfectly styled with a hint of silver at the temples. Chiseled features that looked like they were carved from granite, and eyes the color of obsidian, currently regarding me with a mixture of surprise and cool assessment. He was older, maybe in his late 30s, and he radiated an authority that made the noisy bar seem to fade into a distant hum. He was dressed in a suit that probably cost more than the bar's entire inventory, a stark anomaly in this setting. "Sorry," I slurred, my hands gripping the lapels of his exquisite jacket to keep from sinking to the floor. The floor, it moved. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "A common complaint in this establishment. Are you all right?" "Oh, I'm not all right. My life just exploded." But I didn't say that. Instead, I stared at his mouth, at the firm, sculpted line of his lips. He was so solid, so real. An anchor in my spinning world. And in that moment of drunken, pain-fueled insanity, he represented the ultimate rebellion. "You're very solid," I mumbled, my filter completely obliterated by whiskey. One dark eyebrow arched. "I've been told that before." Fueled by a courage I knew wasn't my own, I tightened my grip on his tie, a sleek, expensive silk. I pulled myself up on my toes, ignoring his slight stiffening, and pressed my lips to his. It was not a gentle kiss. It was clumsy, desperate, and tasted of whiskey and salt. For a heart-stopping second he was completely still, unresponsive. I was about to pull away, mortification finally breaking through the alcohol, when one of his hands came up to cradle the back of my head, his fingers tangling in my hair. He didn't deepen the kiss, but he held me there, his other arm a firm band around my waist, keeping me upright. He broke the kiss, his dark eyes searching mine, their depths unreadable. "Miss, I think you've had enough." "Elara," I breathed. "My name is Elara." "Miss Elara," he amended, his voice a low murmur. "I'm not the kind of man who takes advantage of inebriated women. Are you sure you want to continue this?" "Shut up," I whispered, leaning in again, my body molding to his. "Don't talk. Kiss me." I don't remember much after that. A blur of movement, the feel of his chest under my hands, the scent of him overwhelming my senses. I have a vague memory of being lifted into his arms as if I weighed nothing, of the stunned faces of the bar patrons parting for us, of the cool night air again, and then the sterile, quiet interior of an elevator. The next thing I knew, I was waking up. The first sensation was a pounding headache, a relentless drumbeat behind my eyes. The second was the unfamiliar softness of the sheets and the weight of a duvet that wasn't mine. My eyes flew open. I was in a massive, minimalist bedroom, all clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing a breathtaking view of the Ethelberg skyline and muted gray tones. And I was not alone. Cassian Valerius was sitting up in bed beside me, the sheets pooled around his waist, revealing a torso that was all hard planes and sculpted muscle. He was holding his phone, but his dark, obsidian eyes were fixed on me, watching me wake up with an unnerving intensity. My breath hitched. Memories of the previous night came flooding back in a torrent of humiliation. The bar. The fall. The kiss. Oh God. The kiss. I snatched the blanket, pulling it up to my chin, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was worse than the scene at the Opal Lounge. So much worse. He didn't say a word. He simply placed his phone on the bedside table, picked up a sleek black cigarette case, and lit one with a calm, deliberate motion. As he moved, my gaze, wide with horror, caught on a distinct purplish bite mark on his collarbone. "Could I have—" "Oh, please no." "Miss Thorne," he said finally, his voice even deeper in the morning quiet. He exhaled a plume of smoke. "I trust you slept well." "Mr. Valerius," I stammered, my voice raspy. I knew exactly who he was. Everyone in Ethelberg knew Cassian Valerius. The true power behind the Valerius Empire. Alexander's uncle. A man known for his ruthless business tactics and a personal life shrouded in mystery. And I had accosted him in a dive bar. "Yesterday was my first day back in the country," he continued, his tone conversational as if discussing the weather. And I was rather publicly taken advantage of by you in front of a room full of witnesses. My assistant's phone has been ringing off the hook with calls from reporters all morning. Taken advantage of. The phrase made my stomach lurch. He wasn't wrong. I'm so sorry, I managed to say, my face burning. I was not myself last night. So I gathered. Desperate to make amends, to flee this scene of my ultimate disgrace, I fumbled for an escape. Money. I could pay him. It was crass, but it was all I could think of. I twisted the expensive platinum watch from my wrist, a birthday gift from my parents, and carefully placed it on his bedside table. I don't have any cash on me right now, I said, the words tasting absurd. So this watch will have to serve as compensation. Is that okay? The moment the words left my mouth, I wanted to vanish. Compensate Cassian Valerius with a watch? It was like offering a bucket of water to a man who owned the ocean. He picked up the watch, turning it over in his long, elegant fingers. A slow, dangerous smile played on his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. Miss Thorne, he said, his voice dropping to a silken, menacing purr. Do you think my first time is only worth a watch? My blood ran cold. First time? What was he talking about? He leaned closer, the scent of sandalwood and tobacco enveloping me. You slept with me. Now you need to take responsibility. I stared at him, utterly bewildered. What? His obsidian eyes held mine captive. Marry me. The world stopped. The pounding in my head ceased. I could only gape at him. What did you say? Marry me, he repeated as if it were the most logical proposition in the world. From now on, when Alexander sees you, he'll have to respectfully call you Auntie. And I, he added, a flicker of something dark in his gaze, do not cheat. I was too stunned to speak. This was madness. A drunken one-night stand with my ex-fiancé's formidable uncle, and now a marriage proposal? I studied his face, looking for any sign of mockery, but found none. He was completely serious. Why? I finally whispered, the question tearing from my throat. He took a final drag of his cigarette and stubbed it out. Because I hate being taken advantage of. He gave me a slow, deliberate once-over. And because it amuses me. Half an hour later, standing on the steps of the Ethelberg Civil Affairs Bureau, I held a small red booklet in my hand that felt both alien and terrifyingly final. The words marriage certificate were embossed in gold leaf. I was now Alara Valerius, wife of Cassian Valerius. I sneaked a glance at the man beside me. He was typing something on his phone, his profile stark and unreadable against the morning sun. My life had been completely upended, twisted into a shape I no longer recognized. I had set out for revenge, but I had gotten something infinitely more complex and dangerous. At that moment, my phone buzzed from inside my bag, shattering the surreal silence. I looked at the screen. Alexander. A part of me, the old, conditioned part, still clenched with a familiar anxiety. I took a deep breath, my new wedding ring feeling heavy and significant on my finger. I answered the phone. What's up? His voice was a mixture of irritation and condescension. Alara, I waited in front of your house all night. Where did you go? Stop this tantrum. Send me your location. I'll come to you. You need to explain yourself. I looked at the large sign of the Civil Affairs Bureau, then at the impassive face of my new husband. A slow, cold smile spread across my lips. Revenge, it turned out, was a dish best served with a marriage certificate. Okay, I said into the phone, my voice sweet. I'll send it to you right now. The phone was a dead weight in my hand after I ended the call with Alexander. I could still hear the echo of his entitled, arrogant tone, demanding an explanation as if I were a misbehaving child. For 3 years, that tone had been enough to send me scrambling to appease him. Now it felt like a relic from a past life, a language I no longer spoke. Cassian watched me, his expression unreadable. He hadn't questioned my call, hadn't demanded to know who it was. He simply observed, a king surveying his domain. A problem? He asked, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate in the quiet space between us. No, I said, and the word felt like a declaration of independence. Not a problem at all. I opened my messaging app, my fingers flying over the screen with a certainty that surprised me. I didn't just send the location. I typed out a precise, damning message. Ethelberg Civil Affairs Bureau Marriage Registration Office. I attached a photo of the red certificate, my name and his uncle's starkly visible, and hit send. A strange, giddy feeling bubbled up inside me, a mix of terror and exhilaration. I had just lit the fuse on a bomb that would decimate the world I'd known. Cashin's phone buzzed and he glanced at it. "It seems the vultures have caught the scent," he remarked, showing me the screen. His assistant's chat was indeed a torrent of missed calls and frantic messages from various media outlets. A public declaration might quell the speculation. It would be efficient. He opened his phone's camera and held it up. I understood. This was part of the deal, part of the performance. I moved to stand beside him, my shoulder brushing against the fine wool of his suit. I forced a smile, one that I hoped looked more like triumphant newlywed bliss than sheer abject panic. The camera shutter clicked. He lowered his head, his focus entirely on his screen as he typed a caption. I, curious and still riding that wave of reckless courage, pulled out my own phone. I had added his social media account a lifetime ago, during a phase when I'd tried to immerse myself in every aspect of the Valerius family. His profile had been a barren wasteland of corporate announcements. Till now. The top 2 posts were from him, posted just seconds ago. The first, "Just got married," accompanied by 9 nearly identical pictures of us standing on the bureau steps. The second, "Live well, love slowly. Not too early, not too late, just right for you." Another 9 pictures, the angles only slightly different. I stared, dumbfounded. He had taken 18 photos in the span of a minute? This calculated, ruthless man was spamming his social media with wedding photos like a lovesick teenager? It was so bizarre, so utterly out of character that it looped back to being terrifying. This wasn't a display of affection. It was a strategic deployment of information, a territorial claim stamped across the digital landscape. "Are you not going to like the posts?" he asked without looking up, his fingers still tapping. I jumped, my thumb instinctively hitting the like button on both. The action felt like signing a contract in blood. On the drive back to his penthouse, our penthouse, a thought that made my head spin, I stared out the window watching the familiar streets of Ethelberg blur past. The city looked the same, but I was fundamentally, irrevocably different. I was no longer Alara Thorne, the devoted fiancée. I was Alara Valerius, a woman who had married for the pettiest, most glorious revenge. A familiar silver sports car, driving with its owner's characteristic aggression, shot past us in the opposite direction. Alexander. He must have flown from the Opal Lounge the moment he got my message. The irony was so thick I could taste it. He was rushing to the Civil Affairs Bureau, believing I was there to beg him for a marriage certificate, while I was sitting next to his uncle, my new husband, with the real thing burning a hole in my purse. A few minutes later my phone buzzed again. A text from Alexander. "I'm here. Where are you? Why didn't I see you?" I didn't hesitate. I opened my contacts, found his name and blocked him. The simple action was more cathartic than any scream or thrown object could ever be. He must have seen the message failed notification immediately because another text came through from a different number. "Did you block me? Do you know how much it took for me to decide to come to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get the certificate with you? Unblock me within 1 minute. There's only one chance to get the certificate and it won't be available after this." I could picture his face, the smug certainty crumbling into confused frustration. He was still playing the same old game, convinced this was all an elaborate negotiation tactic. I blocked that number too. Then I went through every app, every platform, severing the digital threads that had bound me to him for so long. With each block and delete, a chain fell away. When I was done, I let out a long, slow breath I felt like I'd been holding for years. Cashin pulled the car to a smooth stop in front of a towering glass skyscraper I knew well. The Valerius corporate headquarters, with his private residence occupying the top 3 floors. He walked around, opened my door with an old-world courtesy that felt both genuine and practiced, and offered his hand. "Come," he said, his dark eyes holding a glint I couldn't decipher. "Let's go on our honeymoon. It's the perfect time to see if you like your wedding gift." "Wedding gift?" I asked, bewildered. A marriage of convenience came with gifts? He didn't answer, simply guided me to a private elevator that required both a keycard and a retinal scan. We didn't go up to the penthouse. Instead, the elevator descended to an underground garage where a sleek, black jet was waiting, its engines humming softly. This wasn't a commercial flight. This was his personal aircraft. The flight was a blur of luxury and silence. I was too overwhelmed to speak, and Cashin seemed content to work on his laptop, the quiet between us not uncomfortable, just immense. When we landed and I stepped out, the air was different, warm, salty, and clean. We were on a tarmac that seemed to be carved into a lush, tropical coastline. The perfect time to see if you like your wedding gift, Cashin repeated, gesturing to the paradise that stretched out before us. Emerald jungles spilled down to meet powder-white beaches, and the ocean was a breathtaking mosaic of turquoise and sapphire. I was speechless. I had my assistant handle the property transfer, he continued, his tone as casual as if he were discussing the weather. Solara Island is now under your name. An island. He had given me an entire island. The sheer, absurd magnitude of it made my head spin. My thoughts flashed back to the watch I'd tried to give him, that pathetic tens of thousands of dollars token. I had insulted him without even realizing it. A watch was a tip, an island was a statement. $1 billion statement of intent. As we walked along a crushed shell path toward a stunning open-air villa, I noticed a figure sitting on a dock fishing. I thought this was a private island? Asked curious. Cashin followed my gaze. It is. But I bought the land, not the people's lives. The families who have lived here for generations were allowed to stay. I don't visit often. It seemed unnecessary to displace them. This glimpse of something other than ruthless business pragmatism surprised me. The people of Solara Island were indeed warm and simple. They didn't see a billionaire or a society wife. They saw Mr. Cashin and his new bride. Mr. Lee is here. Mr. Lee, I knew you were bringing Mrs. Lee today, so I caught these fish early this morning. They're fresh. Mrs. Lee, I picked these fruits from the mountain for you. Try them. They're unique to this place. You won't find them anywhere else. Mrs. Lee, I just made these snacks. Please take them. By the time we reached the villa, my arms were laden with gifts, woven baskets of strange, sweet fruit, clay pots of still-warm snacks, and promises of the freshest fish for dinner. It was a welcome so genuine it brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Back at the villa, I sat on a plush sofa, arranging my humble treasures on a table of polished driftwood, and happily tasted each one. I felt a gaze on me and looked up. Cashin was watching me, a faint, real smile softening the hard line of his mouth. His dark eyes, usually so impenetrable, held little shards of light, reflecting the sun-dappled ocean behind me. In that moment he didn't look like a predator or a strategist. He just looked like a man watching his wife, and the simplicity of that thought was more disarming than any grand gesture. That night, after a bath in a sunken tub that overlooked the moonlit sea, I realized with a jolt that there was no bathrobe. Summoning my courage, I cracked the bathroom door open. Cashin, are you out there? No answer, just the sound of the ocean. I can't find a bathrobe, I called out, my voice echoing in the vast bathroom. Could you bring me some clothes? I heard the sound of movement in the adjacent room, a drawer opening and closing. I sighed in relief, waiting patiently behind the door. A moment later his hand appeared, holding a soft, white bathrobe. I blushed, taking it and muttering a shy, "Thank you." As I was about to close the door, my eyes traveled past his hand. He wasn't dressed. A towel was wrapped low around his hips, and droplets of water clung to his skin, tracing paths down the defined ridges of his abdomen. He must have just showered in the other room. The water slid lower, disappearing into the towel, and my mind instantly flashed back to the bite mark on his collarbone, to the hazy, heated memories of the night before. Afraid of a repeat performance, I quickly tried to close the door, but he blocked it with his arm, his skin warm and damp against the wood. A slow, devastating smile played on his lips. "Mrs. Valerius," he said, his voice a low, intimate caress that made my knees weak. "We're already married. You can look at me openly. No need to sneak around." That face, that voice, that teasing, confident comment. It was a combination I was utterly defenseless against. The bathrobe slipped from my numb fingers. I reached out, grabbed his wrist and pulled him into the steam-filled bathroom. He didn't resist. He moved with a predator's grace, pinning my waist against the cold, tiled wall, sending a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. His mouth found mine, and this time the kiss was not clumsy or desperate. It was deliberate, skilled, and devastatingly thorough, erasing every thought of Alexander, of revenge, of anything but the feel of his hands on my skin and the taste of him on my lips. By the time I stumbled out of the bathroom much later, my legs were like jelly. But Cashin wasn't done. He swept me into his arms and carried me to the bedroom, where the glass walls revealed a sky dusted with a million stars. "Wife," he murmured against my ear, his voice husky. "The night view of Solara Island is pretty nice too. Want to check it out?" He didn't wait for an answer. He braced me against the cool glass, the entire universe spread out before us, and made love to me with a fierce, possessive intensity that burned away the last remnants of the woman I had been. I was no longer just seeking refuge in his arms. I was getting lost in them, and a treacherous, thrilling part of me never wanted to be found. I had barely fallen into a deep, satiated sleep, tangled in the sheets and the scent of cashin, when the insistent buzzing of my phone dragged me back to consciousness. My arm, heavy with sleep, fumbled from under the covers, blindly searching the nightstand until my fingers closed around the cool rectangular device. "Hello," I rasped, my voice hoarse from the night's activities. "Haven't you had enough?" Alexander's voice, sharp with a familiar, grating irritation, sliced through the peaceful morning haze. "Blocking me on WeChat, blocking my number. I know you're still upset about Chloe's pregnancy, but it was an accident." The sound of his name, the mention of her, was like a bucket of ice water. The blissful bubble of Solara Island popped, and the real world with all its messy complications came crashing back in. "Yesterday I took her to the hospital for an abortion," he continued, his tone implying this was a grand, magnanimous gesture on his part. "But the doctor said her uterine lining is thin. If she loses this baby, she might not be able to get pregnant again." I said nothing, my grip tightening on the phone. I could picture his expression perfectly, the long-suffering look he wore when he felt the world was being unfair to him. "This is my fault," he declared with all the sincerity of a bad actor. "And once the baby is born, I'll send Chloe abroad and you'll raise the child." There was his grand solution. His idea of a compromise. He expected me to step in, to play the dutiful, understanding fiancé, to clean up his mess and raise his mistress's child. The sheer, unadulterated audacity of it took my breath away. "Alexander," I interrupted, my voice dangerously calm. "Let me give you some advice. If you've got money to burn, go to the hospital and check into the psychiatric ward." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end. Then he burst out laughing, a harsh, disbelieving sound. "Aren't you just throwing a tantrum because Chloe's pregnant? Fine, we'll go get married today. How's that? Where are you? I'll come get you. Or better yet, let's meet at the Civil Affairs Bureau at 10 o'clock. He was still dictating terms, still arranging my life as if I were a piece on his chessboard. Rage, hot and pure, boiled up inside me. "Meet my ass," I snapped, sitting bolt upright in bed. "Go to the underworld and get married to your ancestors. We've already broken off our engagement. If you don't understand that, go look it up in a dictionary." His laughter died instantly. "Alara, I'm giving you this one chance to get married. If you don't take it, don't regret it later. If I regret it, then I'm your ancestor." "Okay." With that, I hung up and promptly blocked the unfamiliar number. I tossed the phone onto the bed as if it were a venomous snake. Cashin was awake, propped on an elbow, watching me. His dark eyes were alert, missing nothing. "Trouble?" he asked, his voice a low, morning rumble. "Just taking out the trash," I said, my heart still pounding with adrenaline. He didn't press further. Instead, he leaned over and kissed my shoulder, a simple, possessive gesture that was more comforting than any words. "The fish are biting this time of day," he said, effectively changing the subject and pulling me back into our sanctuary. Later that afternoon, after my fury had subsided to a low simmer, I mentioned wanting to try fishing. Cashin immediately arranged for a small, elegant boat. Out on the crystal-clear water, he stood at the bow, casting a net with a practiced, powerful grace that was mesmerizing to watch. My eyes widened. "Have you fished before? You seem pretty skilled at it." The setting sun bathed him in a reddish-gold glow, highlighting the sharp planes of his face. He glanced back at me, a faint, genuine smile on his lips. "Men are naturally good at this. No need to learn." I couldn't help the laugh that escaped me, or the genuine admiration in my voice. "Wow, you're amazing." He cleared his throat, looking almost embarrassed. "For you," he said, his gaze holding mine for a moment longer before he turned back to the water. For the next 2 weeks, we lived in a sun-drenched dream. We stayed on Solara Island, where I learned the rhythms of the tide and the names of the stars. Then Cashin whisked me away to see the snow-capped peaks of the Azure Mountains and the golden spires of the Saffron Palace. It was a real honeymoon, a whirlwind of breathtaking beauty and quiet intimacy that felt more real with each passing day. I was falling hard and fast for the man I had married for revenge, and the terrifying part was I didn't want to stop. One evening, as we watched the sunset paint the palace walls in hues of fire and gold, Cashin stood by our window taking a call. His side of the conversation was terse. "I understand. Of course, I'll bring your daughter-in-law over." My ears perked up. "Daughter-in-law?" He ended the call and turned to me. "Tomorrow is my father's birthday. He wants us to come back for it." My stomach did a nervous flip. The Lee family patriarch's birthday. I was going to have to face them all. "Alexander. I haven't prepared a gift yet," I stammered, my mind racing. "How about we go out and buy one now?" Cashin tossed his phone aside and wrapped his arms around me, pulling my back against his chest. His warmth was a solid comfort. "You don't need to prepare a gift," he murmured into my hair. "Just tell him tomorrow that you're pregnant. That'll make him happier than any gift." My breath hitched. For the past month, Cashin had been relentless. And a few days ago, after a persistent wave of nausea, we'd visited a small clinic on the mainland. The confirmation was still fresh and surreal. "You think that's a good idea? To announce it like that?" "It's a perfect idea," he said, his voice laced with a dark amusement. "It's the truth, isn't it?" The Lee family estate was a whirlwind of opulence and noise. The patriarch's birthday banquet was the social event of the season, and everyone who was anyone in Ethelberg was there. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the clinking of crystal champagne flutes. Cashin and I arrived, his hand a firm, possessive presence on the small of my back. As we entered the grand hall, my eyes immediately found Alexander. He was surrounded by his usual crowd, including Leo, who was chattering animatedly. "So, your little aunt will be here today too, right?" Leo was saying. "A month ago the circle was buzzing about how your uncle got married and even posted a bunch of lovey-dovey pictures on social media. Too bad we don't have his WeChat. I'd love to see who managed to capture the heart of the usually aloof Cashin." "Alexander, how come none of us have your uncle's WeChat? And even you, his nephew, don't," another friend added. Alexander's face was like a thundercloud. He said nothing, his jaw clenched so tight I thought it might crack. Leo, ever the instigator, patted him on the shoulder with a laugh. "If you knew it would come to this, why did you act like that in the first place? Ilara disappeared without a word for a month and now you're getting nervous." Standing at the entrance, Alexander scoffed, a sound meant to convey indifference but which rang hollow. "What's there to be nervous about? Today's Grandpa's birthday. She was bound to show up sooner or later." "Keep telling yourself that," Leo retorted. "You'd better sweet-talk Ilara when you see her. Or if she's really determined to break off the engagement, you'll have nowhere to cry." "You really believe that?" Alexander's voice dripped with condescending confidence. "A month is the most she can stay away from me. When we meet later she'll act like nothing happened and make up with me." Hearing his delusional words, so sure of his power over me, solidified my resolve. I didn't need revenge anymore. I had moved so far beyond him. "Don't say any more, Alex. Your sister-in-law is here," one of his friends whispered, spotting us. "Why is she standing with your uncle?" "They probably just bumped into each other downstairs," Alexander said dismissively, not even bothering to look properly. He strode over, his back to me as he addressed Cashin. "Uncle, didn't Grandpa say my little aunt would be here today? When is she arriving?" Cashin raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on his lips as he looked at his nephew like he was a particularly slow child. Leo, ever helpful, nudged Alexander. "I've heard that Mr. Valerius got married, and today we finally get to meet the legendary Mrs. Valerius." He then elbowed Alexander sharply. "Didn't you have something to say to your sister-in-law? We can wait here for Mrs. Valerius, so go ahead." He desperately gave him signals with his eyes. Alexander, however, just snorted and walked a few steps away from me, his pride still intact in his own mind. Leo looked like a babysitter about to worry himself to death. "Sister-in-law, don't hold it against him," he pleaded with me. "During the month you were gone, Alex nearly turned all of Ethelberg upside down, worried something might have happened to you. Just give him a few kind words and he'll be fine." It was the final push I needed. I looked up at Cashin, a slow, deliberate smile spreading across my face. Then I took his left hand, intertwining our fingers, and held our joined hands up slightly. Let's go, husband, I said, my voice clear and carrying in the sudden lull that had fallen around our little group. Cashin, always the center of attention, looked both devastating and captivated. Leo and his friends looked as if they'd been struck by lightning, frozen in place, their mouths agape. If I'm not mistaken, one of them finally stammered, Alex's little aunt is Alara. The shockwave began to ripple out from our epicenter. The walk from the entrance to the center of the ballroom felt like a victory march and a funeral procession all at once. Cashin's hand was a steady anchor in mine, his presence a shield of immovable confidence. I could feel the weight of 100 stares, the sudden hush that fell over the glittering crowd as we passed. Whispers rose in our wake, a sibilant chorus of shock and speculation. Is that Alara Thorne? With Cashin Valerius? But she's engaged to Alexander. Did you see their hands? They're holding hands. Look at Alexander's face. Oh, this is going to be good. I didn't look at Alexander. I kept my gaze fixed ahead, my chin held high, a serene smile plastered on my face that I hoped masked the frantic beating of my heart. We reached a relatively quiet spot near a towering ice sculpture, the cold emanating from it a stark contrast to the heat of the room. Behind us, I heard Leo's stunned voice. This is beyond shocking. How did these two end up together? Another friend muttered. So, while Alex has been deluding himself into thinking Alara would come back during this past month, she's actually already gotten married and gone on her honeymoon. The group lit cigarettes right there in the ballroom, a breach of etiquette that spoke volumes of their turmoil. The news, as we had intended, was spreading through the room like wildfire. The surrounding whispers of mockery which had once been directed at me, now found a new target. She's really holding back. If my husband's mistress got pregnant and came knocking, I'd have slapped the scumbag and kicked him out a long time ago. Alara wouldn't dare. Disappearing for a month is the most she could manage. Now she's just using the patriarch's birthday as an excuse to reconcile with Alexander. I don't know what's so special about that Alexander. What makes her so devoted to him? I don't get it, but I respect it. They didn't bother lowering their voices. Alexander heard it too. I could feel his glare burning a hole in my back. The mockery, the shift in perception, was a blow his colossal ego couldn't absorb. I saw him out of the corner of my eye, his face a mask of thunderous fury. And then he made his move. In a staggering display of audacity, he wrapped his arm around Chloe, who had appeared at his side like a bad omen, and strode towards us, a mocking smile plastered on his face for the benefit of the watching crowd. Don't worry, he said loudly, his voice cutting through the murmurs. He was looking at Chloe, but every word was meant for me. Mrs. Sterling will always be you, and you'll raise the child in the future. A fresh wave of gasps swept the room. Mr. Sterling, you've gone too far. Cheating and still being so self-righteous about it. They're not even married yet, and she's already being forced to raise a mistress's child? One's willing to hit and the other's willing to take it. Why are we as bystanders getting so worked up? The entire banquet hall fell into a breathless silence, every guest watching the scene unfold, afraid to miss a single moment. I was slightly stunned by his sheer gall, my hand moving instinctively to my stomach. The motion was small, but Cashin's eyes, which missed nothing, caught it. Before I could form a response, Cashin's arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me firmly against his side. He chuckled softly, a low, dangerous sound that seemed to suck all the air out of the room. The simple, possessive action was a declaration of war. Alexander's composure finally shattered. He let go of Chloe, his face dark with a rage I had never seen before. "Uncle," he demanded, his voice trembling. "What do you mean by this? Lara's my fiancée. Let go of her." Cashin's eyes, usually so dark and unreadable, turned to chips of cold, piercing ice. "A month ago you two broke off the engagement. I was there. I heard the ring hit the floor." Alexander gritted his teeth, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "I didn't agree, so it doesn't count." "She is now your aunt," Cashin stated, his voice flat and final, brooking no argument. "We've already registered our marriage. So watch your tone when speaking to your elders." The collective gasp that filled the room was almost comical. I saw the realization dawn on Alexander's face, his mind racing, connecting the timeline, understanding the truth of my message from the Civil Affairs Bureau. His pupils constricted in dawning horror. Cashin didn't just win. He delivered the killing blow. You can raise your own child. Your aunt won't be raising him, he said, his gaze flicking dismissively to Chloe's stomach. Then his eyes returned to me and his voice, while still firm, held a new, possessive warmth. Because she's pregnant too. She'll be raising your cousin. The silence was absolute. Then Alexander snapped. Cashin. It was the first time he had called his uncle by name. Each word was forced through gritted teeth, laced with a madness I had never seen in him. I'm Alara's fiancé. You're the third party ruining our relationship. Have you no shame? He lunged. It was a clumsy, furious move, more emotion than skill. He didn't even get close. Cashin moved with a speed that was breathtaking. He didn't step back. He stepped into the lunge, his foot connecting with Alexander's midsection in a swift, brutal kick that sent his nephew stumbling back into a table, sending glasses of champagne crashing to the floor in a symphony of shattering crystal. Alexander scrambled to his feet, ready to charge again, but before he could, the stern voice of Patriarch Valerius echoed through the hall. You idiot! The old man stood there, his face purple with rage. If you want to make a fool of yourself, don't drag the Valerius family down with you. Grandfather, he stole my fiancée. Alexander shouted, anger and madness intertwining, his composure completely gone. If the bodyguards hadn't rushed forward to hold him back, he would have started a brawl right there. Alexander's mother, seeing the old man's fury, rushed forward and slapped her son across the face. The sound cracked through the silence. You lost her yourself. What does that have to do with your uncle? You're just a fool. Her voice was shrill with embarrassment and anger. When Alara liked you, you deliberately ignored her. Now that she's married, you pull a stunt like this? How did I end up with such a disgraceful son like you? Get home now and stay out of the company for a while. You've shamed your father and me enough. As the bodyguards forcibly dragged him from the ballroom, Alexander was still cursing, his shouts echoing in the stunned silence. Alara. This isn't over. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back. His voice faded as he was hauled out, leaving a room full of shocked aristocrats and a shattered reputation. The spectacle was over. The king had been dethroned publicly and utterly. I stood there, Cashin's arms still a solid band around me, and looked at the faces of the crowd. The pity was gone. In its place was a new, calculating respect. They weren't looking at the scorned woman anymore. They were looking at Mrs. Cashin Valerius. And for the first time that night my smile felt real. The ride back to the penthouse was steeped in a silence that was both heavy and triumphant. The adrenaline that had fueled me through the confrontation at the banquet began to ebb, leaving a hollow, trembling exhaustion in its wake. I leaned my head against the cool window of the car, watching the city lights blur into streaks of gold. I had won. I had stood my ground and watched Alexander's world crumble. So why did I feel so drained? Cashin's hand found mine in the darkness of the back seat, his fingers lacing through mine. It wasn't a gesture of passion but one of solid, unshakable support. He didn't speak, but he didn't need to. His presence was a fortress. The next morning I awoke to a different kind of battlefield. My phone, which I had finally charged, was blowing up. Not with calls from Alexander. Those were still blocked. But with notifications. Dozens of them. Mentions, direct messages, tags and group chats. A cold dread pooled in my stomach. I opened a social media app and my blood ran cold. The top trending topic in Ethelberg was #scandal in the Valerius family. I clicked on it and my screen flooded with posts from influential bloggers and insider reporters. The narrative was sickeningly twisted. For the past month, young Mr. Sterling has been desperately searching for his fiancée, worried something might have happened to her. But it turns out Alara got married to young Mr. Sterling's uncle and went on a honeymoon. When she came back, she blamed young Mr. Sterling for cheating. This is beyond shameless. I can only say the world of the rich is truly chaotic. #fiancé seduces uncle, #Alexander betrayed, #Alara takes her place, #the truth. The comments were a torrent of vitriol, all directed at me. I take back everything I said about Alexander. I wrongly accused you. I knew about Alexander's search. He almost turned the capital upside down. I was thinking, who's lucky enough to have someone care so much? Didn't expect Alara to be this kind of woman, juggling 2 men at once. Alara, do you have any shame? If you don't like Alexander, just let him go. You keep the title of his fiancée while messing around with someone else. No wonder he went out and found a girlfriend. It's all because of you. Now I understand young Mr. Sterling. I heard he doesn't have much say in the company, always being overshadowed by his uncle. Now even his fiancée has become someone else's and he's being falsely accused of being a scumbag. I support Chloe and Alexander being together. I scrolled through the comments under the Valerius corporate account, my hands shaking with a fresh, cold fury. Chloe. She had done this. She had hired these bloggers, fed them this fabricated story, painting herself and Alexander as the victims and me as the villainous seductress. How did Chloe, who knowingly became the other woman, get the audacity to pull this off? I muttered to myself, the anger crystallizing into a sharp, clear purpose. Her dirt isn't even hard to dig up. I spent the next hour on my laptop, a deep, focused dive into Chloe's past. It was astonishingly easy. A simple search, a few calls to old university acquaintances who had never liked her, and a torrent of information came flowing in. I compiled it all, chat logs, testimonies, everything. Then I acted. I didn't go to the media. I went directly to the source. I created a burner account and began posting methodically and precisely, in the comment sections of every viral post, under every blogger's tweet. I was no longer a Lara, the victim. I was a Lara, the strategist. You only leaked information that benefits you, and you conveniently forgot to mention that you knowingly became the other woman. I'm here to reveal the truth. It's nothing like Chloe claimed. She tried to climb the social ladder by having a child. Deliberately poked holes in the condom, then publicly threw up to destroy Alexander and Alara's relationship. That's why they broke off the engagement. This isn't Chloe's first time pulling something like this. When we were in college we shared a dorm and back then many rich wives came looking to beat her up. Her seducing wealthy men at our school wasn't a secret. Alexander and Chloe are truly a match made in heaven, both shameless to the core. Thankfully, Alara cut her losses in time and got rid of the trash. The tide began to turn. The netizens who had been supporting Chloe felt betrayed. They immediately turned their keyboards against her, their anger now unleashed on the real target. The online narrative shifted from #scandal in the Valerius family to #Chloe the homewrecker and #Alexander the delusional. Later that day, Cashin found me on the terrace, my laptop closed beside me watching the city. He placed a hand on my shoulder. The online noise, he said. I can have my legal team make it disappear. I looked up at him, a new steel in my gaze. No, I said. I handled it. He looked intrigued, a faint smile touching his lips. Did you now? I did. They won't be a problem anymore. He didn't ask for details. He simply nodded, his respect for me seeming to grow in that silent exchange. He had his methods and I was quickly learning I had mine. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit bar, Alexander's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Annoyed, he finally answered. On the other end, Chloe's voice trembled with fear and tears. Alexander, my stomach suddenly hurts. Can you take me to the hospital? There are reporters swarming outside my building. I can't get out. Alexander hung up without a word. He downed a glass of amber liquor, his face a mask of frustration. His friend John, who had witnessed the entire debacle, wasn't surprised. Just accept it. Regretting it now won't change anything. Alara is now your elder. Alexander's eyes were bloodshot. Has she called any of you? He demanded, looking at Leo and the others. Leo shook his head. What calls? She's blocked and deleted everyone who was close to you. John could see the desperate strategy crumbling. You deliberately let Chloe post those things online to provoke Alara into coming back to you. Face reality. Alara is done with you. She's loved me for 3 years. Alexander's voice was a ragged whisper, full of disbelief. How could she just stop loving me? It's not like this is the first time something like this has happened. When has she ever seriously held it against me? She must be trying to provoke me to make me go after her. He nodded, convincing himself. Yes, if I go to her she'll come back. You're right. She's using the marriage certificate to provoke me. He wasn't listening to reason anymore. He grabbed his car keys and stormed out of the bar, a man chasing a ghost. The days that followed the online war were strangely peaceful. Cashin and I settled into a new domestic rhythm in the penthouse. The vast, minimalist space, which had once felt like a gilded cage, was slowly starting to feel like a home. Our home. The fear and uncertainty that had marked the beginning of our arrangement were gradually being replaced by a quiet, simmering connection. a mutual respect that ran deeper than our initial pact of revenge. One afternoon we went to a pet store. It was my idea, a whim born from a childhood desire I'd always suppressed for Alexander's sake. We came home with a wriggling, fluffy Alaskan Malamute puppy, all big paws and soulful blue eyes. We named him Titan. As we walked back into our building's luxurious lobby, Titan cradled in Cashin's arms, I saw him. Alexander. He was sitting on the marble edge of an ornamental fountain, a picture of utter desolation. He reeked of alcohol, his hair was disheveled, and his expensive shirt was wrinkled and stained. His eyes were red-rimmed and listless. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, a ghost of the arrogant man I'd once known. A few residents gave him a wide berth, and I saw a security guard speaking into his radio, probably trying to confirm if this haggard man had actually escaped from a mental institution. Ilara. My name was a ragged whisper on his lips. I stopped, Cashin pausing beside me. In just a few days Alexander had become a stranger, hollowed out by a regret he'd never thought he'd feel. He looked at me, his eyes red and pleading, like a child who had broken his favorite toy. I'm sorry, Ilara. Please don't leave me. I really know I was wrong. His voice cracked. I took your love for granted, thinking you'd love me forever without realizing you could be hurt too. I really know I was wrong. Let's get married and I'll treat the child in your belly as my own. Is that okay? The audacity, even in his broken state, was breathtaking. Cashin's eyes darkened, a storm gathering in their depths. Do you want to die? Alexander's head snapped up, a flicker of his old defiance returning. I'm Ilara's true love. We've been together for 3 years. She always took care of me. When I was drunk, she'd make me tea to sober up. She'd come pick me up. She doesn't really love you. She's just angry with me, trying to provoke me. I felt Cashin's grip on Titan unconsciously. The puppy let out a small whine. I looked at Alexander, the man who had been the center of my universe for so long, and I felt nothing but a distant, weary pity. Oh, Alexander, I said, my voice soft but firm. What you're talking about is in the past. I reached out and took Cashin's free hand, lacing my fingers through his. From now on, I'll only make tea for Cashin when he's drunk. I'll only pick him up from social events. Alexander's gaze then dropped to the fluffy puppy in Cashin's arms. His eyes widened in pure, unadulterated disbelief. You're actually holding a dog. He stared at Cashin as if he were seeing a mirage. You're not afraid of dogs anymore. I had always wanted a large dog, but Alexander hated them, so I never got one. I remembered now. Cashin and Alexander had both been bitten by a large dog as children and had shared that fear. Cashin looked down at Titan, who was now chewing contentedly on his sleeve. My wife likes them, he said, his voice even, so I'll make myself accept it. Unlike you, who only made Ilara compromise to accommodate you. The words were a final, brutal blow. Alexander lowered his head in utter defeat. I'm sorry, Ilara. I can keep a dog too if that's what you like. We can have one together, okay? Whatever he can do, I can do too. It was the desperate plea of a man who had finally realized the value of what he had lost, only to find it was forever beyond his reach. I don't like you anymore, I said, the words simple, clean, and absolute. No matter what you do, I don't want you anymore. I turned to Cashin, my heart full. Let's go, husband. Let's go home. Cashin walked past him, Titan still in his arms, and he deliberately raised a questioning eyebrow at his nephew. Come on, little Titan, he said, his voice dripping with condescending warmth. Let's go home. We left Alexander standing there, a broken statue in the middle of the lavish lobby. But he wasn't done. A few days later my phone exploded again. This time it was a shared live stream. With a sense of dread I opened it. Alexander had converted the largest shopping mall his family owned into a massive dog kennel. The scene was chaotic and pathetic. He was still wearing the stained, wrinkled shirt from days before, his hair a greasy mess, his beard unkempt. He looked like a man whose entire world had collapsed. Ilara, look. I'm not afraid of dogs anymore, he shouted into the camera, surrounded by a cacophony of barks. He gestured wildly at the dogs of every breed surrounding him. I've got lots of every breed. Please give me another chance. Ilara, I really know I was wrong. Please don't leave me. The comments were not kind. Delayed affection is worth less than grass. Brother, take my advice. Go change your clothes. In your current state, not even a loser like me would want you, let alone your ex. Get lost. Elara and Cashin together forever. Suddenly, a group of black-clad bodyguards, Cashin's men, stormed into the frame and forcibly shut down the live stream. Get out of here. Why are you shutting down my live stream? Alexander's furious voice yelled off camera. Is Cashin that insecure? He knows Elara loves me and is worried I might win her back. That same night, by order of the Valerius family patriarch, Alexander was put on a plane and sent to manage a remote branch office abroad. He was forbidden from returning to the country. The spectacle was over. The king was not just dethroned, he was exiled. The final weeks of my pregnancy were a study in serene anticipation, a world away from the turmoil that had defined its beginning. The penthouse, once a stage for a marriage of convenience, had truly become a home, filled with the soft whimpers of Titan, the low rumble of Cashin's voice on business calls, and the gentle, swelling proof of our future. Alexander was a ghost, his memory fading like a bad dream in the warmth of the morning sun. I had found a piece I never knew I was searching for. It was during a routine checkup, my hand resting on the pronounced curve of my belly, that I encountered the last echo of my past life. Chloe found me in the waiting room of the private clinic. She looked diminished. The calculated glamour was gone, replaced by a pale, drawn anxiety. The online backlash and the stress I'd heard had taken their toll. She'd suffered a miscarriage and had never fully recovered. Elara, she whispered, her voice trembling as she approached. Sister, I beg you. Please tell me where Alexander is. I've been looking for him for so long, but I can't find any trace of him. Please just tell me. Her eyes were desperate. You don't want him anymore. So, please just tell me. A cold anger, clean and sharp, rose within me. This woman, who had willingly been a part of my humiliation, now dared to kneel before me in a clinic, begging for scraps of the man she'd helped destroy. Who let you in? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. Get out. Sister, please have pity on me. Just tell me where he is. I'll kneel if you want. Her voice escalated into a whine. Before I could respond, a familiar, powerful presence was at my side. Cashin had finished parking the car. He stepped protectively in front of me, his body a shield between me and her desperation. Security, he said, his voice not loud, but carrying an immediate, unquestionable authority. As two guards approached to escort her out, Chloe's desperation curdled into venom. She began shouting nasty curses, her words slashing through the clinic's sterile silence. Cashin didn't flinch. He simply turned to me, his hands coming up to cover my ears, his palms warm and solid, blocking out her toxic words. His dark eyes held mine, and in them I saw no anger, only a fierce, unwavering protection. He was guarding his family. In that moment, any last fragile thread to my old life snapped. I was his completely. The day our daughter was born, the sky over Ethelberg was a clear, cloudless blue. It felt like the world itself was washing itself clean for her arrival. Cashin, the man who commanded boardrooms with a look, was a bundle of uncharacteristic, palpable anxiety outside the delivery room. When the sound of a baby's cry, strong and clear, finally pierced the air, a nurse emerged, holding a tiny, swaddled bundle. Family of Elara, it's a girl. 6 pounds 8 ounces. The father can come see the baby. But Cashin's eyes never left the delivery room door. He was frozen, his gaze fixed on the space where I was. His father, the formidable patriarch Valerius, who had come to the hospital, let out a gruff, affectionate chuckle. Look at you, all nervous and useless. Go on, see your child. But Cashin didn't move until he was allowed in to see me. When I opened my eyes, bleary and exhausted, the first thing I saw was him sitting beside my bed, his hand clutching mine, his face a canvas of raw, undisguised emotion. Elara, he breathed, his voice thick. He leaned forward and pressed a kiss to my forehead. You've been so brave. I managed a weak smile. Where's the baby? Let me see. Is it a boy or a girl? Are they cute? Cashin nodded, then shook his head, a helpless, overwhelmed gesture that made my heart swell with love. Finally, my mother walked over, her eyes shining with tears, holding our daughter. Cashin has been by your side the whole time, she said softly, her voice full of approval. He hasn't even seen the baby yet. It's a girl and she looks just like you did when you were little. I looked up at Cashin in surprise. He had chosen me. In that pivotal moment, his first and only thought had been for me. He handed me a cup of warm water, his touch gentle. "Drink some water first. Your lips are dry." My mother nodded, her gaze soft. Many families focus on the baby at times like this, neglecting the mother's well-being. She looked at Cashin with newfound respect. "Have you chosen a name for the baby?" Cashin nodded, his eyes still on me. "Serena Valerius," he said, his voice firm. "Serena. Pure, rare, and precious." Later, when I was finally holding Serena in my arms, her tiny, perfect fingers curling instinctively around mine, a profound sense of completion settled over me. I looked at her sleeping face, at Cashin watching us both with a quiet, fierce love, and I knew. I didn't need closure from the past. I didn't need to rehash the pain or revel in the revenge. The past was a closed book. Alexander, Chloe, the betrayal, the humiliation, it was all just noise that had led me here, to this silence, to this peace. In Cashin's unwavering love and in the trusting grip of my daughter's hand, I had everything I had ever truly wanted. Peace, love, and a future bright and untainted stretching out before us. I had started this journey seeking to become someone's aunt in a twisted game of revenge. I had ended it by becoming a wife and a mother, cherished and protected, my world finally perfectly whole. The end.